The evening was painted in hues of gold and rose as the city lights flickered across the quiet streets. Amara, a young woman of radiant charm and gentle spirit, had spent the day oblivious to the storm that was about to hit her life. She had always been careful, choosing friends she thought she could trust, and nurturing relationships that seemed genuine. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, joy and envy began an invisible dance around her, one that would soon turn deadly. The day had started like any other, with laughter echoing through Amara's apartment as she prepared for what she believed would be a casual dinner. The man who had won her heart, David, had planned something extraordinary. Unknown to her, months of secret preparation had gone into a plan that would forever change her life, though not in the way anyone expected. David had meticulously coordinated the dinner at her favorite rooftop restaurant, adorned with fairy lights and soft music that tugged at the heartstrings. Amara arrived, her heart fluttering, unaware that her friends had already been tipped off about the proposal. They had been invited under the guise of a small celebration, a convenient cover to ensure witnesses for the night. The atmosphere was perfect, warm, intimate, and tinged with anticipation. David approached her as she stepped onto the balcony, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the lights. "Amara," he said, voice steady but trembling with excitement. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you, something I hope will change both our lives forever." Her heart raced as he knelt on one knee, a small velvet box glimmering in his hand. Time seemed to stretch as he opened it, revealing a ring that sparkled like captured starlight. "Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in Amara's eyes. The answer had been obvious in her heart long before he had asked. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with joy. Around them, friends cheered, and the world seemed to pause in celebration of their love. David slid the ring onto her finger, and the moment was perfect, a snapshot of happiness, a memory to hold on to forever. Yet, in the shadows of their joy, a different kind of emotion stirred. Among the crowd were Amara's closest friends, women she had laughed with, confided in, and shared her dreams with. But on this night, some hearts had been twisted by jealousy. One of her friends, Sophie, had always envied Amara's beauty, charm, and the effortless way life seemed to favor her. Another, Layla, quietly harbored resentment, believing that she deserved recognition and admiration that Amara had effortlessly claimed. As the couple hugged and kissed amidst the celebratory applause, Sophie's smile was tight, forced, almost brittle. Her eyes darted toward Amara, a mixture of admiration and something darker, something that she struggled to suppress. Layla, on the other hand, mastered jealousy with laughter, clinking her glass against others in the crowd. But the intensity in her gaze betrayed the storm brewing beneath her composed exterior. After the proposal, the evening continued with toasts, laughter, and pictures. Amara and David were oblivious to the undercurrent of envy that swirled around them. Friends offered congratulations, some genuinely, others with hidden intentions. They posed for pictures, capturing smiles that would later become haunting reminders of the night that began so beautifully. As the restaurant lights dimmed and the celebration drew to a close, Amara prepared to leave. She had planned to go straight home, eager to share the news with her family. But Sophie and Layla offered to accompany her. "Let's make sure you get home safely," Sophie suggested, her tone dripping with false concern. Amara, trusting her friends implicitly, agreed. She didn't suspect that these women, whom she considered sisters, were already orchestrating a plan fueled by jealousy and spite. The drive home was filled with chatter, laughter, and the occasional pause as they admired the city lights. Yet, the atmosphere carried a subtle tension that Amara could not pinpoint. Her friends spoke in hushed tones, exchanged glances, and occasionally let their words carry a hint of sarcasm about her new engagement. Amara, lost in her excitement, didn't notice the dark seeds being sown in their minds. By the time they approached her street, the evening had taken on a surreal quality. The once celebratory mood was now laced with anticipation, not of joy, but of something unspoken and sinister. as she stepped out of the car, her friends flanking her with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She brushed it off, thinking perhaps she was just tired from the day's excitement. This was the night that marked the beginning of a tragedy no one could have predicted. The night that happiness and envy collided. For Amara, the proposal was a dream fulfilled, a moment of pure joy. But for Sophie and Layla, it was a reminder of what they lacked, an opportunity for envy to manifest in the most destructive way imaginable. In the quiet of the night, as Amara waved goodbye and began the short walk to her apartment, the city seemed unaware of the storm brewing in the hearts of those she trusted. Little did she know, her journey home would be met with betrayal, danger, and heartbreak. The first step in a story that would grip the community, the media, and the hearts of those who would later hear her tale. By the end of that night, the joy of a proposal would be overshadowed by loss, and the love that should have been celebrated would instead become a haunting memory. Amara had said yes to a life of hope and love, but she would never see home again. And all of it had begun with jealousy, a silent predator that lurked where she least expected. The night air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain from the early evening showers. Amara walked briskly down the quiet streets, her engagement sparkling on her finger, a symbol of love and hope. Her heart was light, her thoughts full of the joy that David's proposal had brought. She imagined the faces of her family when she would show them the ring, the happiness in her mother's eyes, the excitement in her younger siblings' voices. Every step felt like the first note of a beautiful symphony, a melody that promised a new beginning. Yet, the world around her seemed unusually still. The usual hum of night traffic was sparse, the laughter of distant pedestrians muted. She felt a flicker of unease, but quickly dismissed it. She had walked this path countless times, and tonight, she felt safe, buoyed by the afterglow of love and celebration. But little did she know, the shadows she trusted most were closer than she imagined. Sophie and Layla had insisted on accompanying her, ostensibly to ensure she reached home safely. But their presence was not an act of kindness. It was a calculated move, born from envy and a desire to claim satisfaction in a way that only jealousy can justify. They followed Amara in the car as she walked, their laughter forced, their eyes tracking her every movement with an intensity that bordered on obsession. Every text on their phones, every whispered conversation, was a part of a plan that would shatter lives in minutes. Amara's mind drifted to the evening's celebration. She replayed the moment David had knelt before her, the words that had changed everything. She smiled, thinking of how easy it had been to fall in love with someone who made her feel seen, valued, and adored. The glow of happiness made her steps lighter, her heart warmer, and for a fleeting moment, it felt as though nothing in the world could touch her. Meanwhile, in the car, Sophie's fingers tapped nervously against the steering wheel. Layla sat beside her, pretending to scroll through her phone, but every so often, she glanced up, eyes sharp and calculating. "She really is happy," Layla muttered, almost to herself. Her words were barely audible, but their tone carried a mixture of resentment and longing, a dangerous cocktail of emotions that had been building for months. Sophie's lips pressed into a thin line. "She doesn't deserve this much happiness," she replied quietly, her words almost lost in the night air. Unaware of the storm closing in around her, Amara continued her walk, taking a shortcut through a narrow lane she often used to save time. The street lights flickered intermittently, casting uneven shadows along the walls. She paused for a moment, glancing back instinctively, as though sensing someone's eyes on her. But the shadows were empty, or so she thought. Sophie and Layla had parked a few meters away, keeping to the darkness, their presence invisible to Amara's trusting eyes. As she moved further along the lane, a faint sound reached her, a shuffle, a whisper, a movement too subtle to notice at first. Her pace quickened. Just nerves, she thought, blaming the unease on the excitement still coursing through her veins. She had walked this route countless times, yet tonight it felt different. Every corner seemed sharper, every sound amplified, as if the city itself were holding its breath. Then, without warning, a figure stepped from the shadows ahead. Amara froze, heart pounding. "Hello," she called, her voice steady but tinged with caution. The figure stepped closer, and recognition flashed in her eyes. It was one of the friends she had trusted most, the very person whose betrayal she had not imagined. Sophie's face appeared first, her smile eerily calm. "Amara," she said, her voice soft, almost comforting. But there was a hardness beneath it that sent a chill down Amara's spine. Layla emerged from the other side, her eyes cold and unyielding. "We need to talk," she said. But it was no casual conversation. The tone carried a weight, an unspoken threat that made Amara's stomach twist in fear. Confusion and disbelief wrestled with her mind. "What's going on? Why are you?" she stammered, realizing too late that the night had taken a turn she hadn't anticipated. The joy and laughter of earlier hours were gone, replaced by tension and a sinister anticipation that clung to the cold air. What happened to celebrating her happiness? Amara thought, but her question was rhetorical. The truth was visible in the calculated expressions of her once trusted friends. Envy had metastasized into something darker, something dangerous. The betrayal was total, complete, and horrifying in its clarity. Before she could react, the situation escalated. Words were exchanged, sharp and bitter. Accusations of favoritism, of taking joy that others could not have, tumbled out, each one a knife in the night. Amara tried to reason, tried to appeal to the memory of shared laughter, of friendship, but reason fell on deaf ears. The friends who had once promised loyalty were now driven by something primal, fueled by jealousy that had been brewing silently for months. Panic set in. Amara's instinct screamed at her to flee, to run, but the alley offered no escape. Every exit seemed blocked, every shadow hiding someone ready to strike. Her heart pounded like a drum of warning. She realized in that moment that happiness can sometimes attract the most dangerous kind of attention, the attention of those closest to you, those who feel entitled to your joy. As the confrontation grew more intense, the night seemed to stretch, each second weighted with dread. The sounds of the city faded into a muffled backdrop, leaving only the rising tension and the cold reality of betrayal. Amara's mind raced. She thought of David, of the life they had planned, and of the dreams she had nurtured for so long. Would they die here, in a narrow lane, stolen by jealousy that had festered unnoticed? The night held its breath, and in that pause, the first irreversible steps toward tragedy were taken. The alley was silent, save for the occasional distant hum of a car engine and the soft rustling of leaves in the night breeze. Amara's mind raced, trying to make sense of the sudden hostility from Sophie and Layla, women she had trusted with her deepest secrets and laughter. Her engagement ring glinted in the dim light, a cruel reminder of the joy she had moments ago, joy that now seemed impossibly distant. Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice trembling, a mix of fear and disbelief. She took a careful step back, instinctively putting distance between herself and the friends she had once considered sisters. Sophie's eyes narrowed. "You have what we wanted," she said, her voice low and chilling, "and that's not something we can accept." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Words like these, veiled yet loaded, made the situation tangible. Her happiness had become a target. She tried reasoning, pleading for understanding. "This isn't you. We've shared everything together. We've been through so much." Her words were desperate, an attempt to awaken any trace of humanity left in her friends. But the human she had known, the one she laughed with, shared secrets with, was gone. Jealousy had consumed them entirely. Layla stepped closer, her hand gripping something hidden beneath her jacket. Sophie's lips curled into a cruel smile. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that precedes tragedy, when every heartbeat feels like a countdown. Amara's instincts screamed at her to run. She darted toward the street, hoping the light would give her some advantage, some chance of escape. But in moments, the alley felt impossibly narrow, the night closing in around her. Her friends moved with intent, cutting off her path with frightening precision. Panic surged as adrenaline overtook rational thought. "Please stop. You don't have to do this," Amara shouted, her voice breaking, echoing in the alley as though the city itself were listening to her pleas. But Sophie's expression remained impassive, unyielding. Layla, once playful and soft-spoken, now radiated a chilling determination. The friends who had once celebrated life were now instruments of destruction. Then it happened. A sudden push, a shoving match fueled by anger and fear, sent Amara staggering backward. She tripped over a small curb, falling hard onto the pavement. Her hands scraped against the rough concrete as panic surged through her. The sound of hurried footsteps behind her confirmed her worst fears. There would be no escape tonight. Amara's mind flashed with memories: David's proposal, the joyous laughter, the friends she had trusted, and the life she had hoped to build. Each memory was a dagger, a cruel juxtaposition of love and betrayal. Her eyes welled with tears as she realized the nightmare she had feared was unfolding in real time. "Why?" she cried again, her voice breaking under the weight of disbelief. Sophie leaned closer, eyes glinting in the streetlight, and whispered, "Because you deserved nothing more than this." The words were venomous, leaving no room for mercy, no hint of remorse. Layla joined in, her hands trembling not with fear, but with excitement, a dark thrill coursing through her. They moved with precision, years of suppressed envy now manifesting in the most destructive way imaginable. Every step, every gesture, was fueled by the belief that Amara's happiness had been stolen, and now they had the power to reclaim it, not through life, but through control, through fear, and ultimately destruction. Amara tried one last desperate attempt to flee, scrambling to her feet, her heart hammering in her chest like a frantic drum. But the alley was a trap. Every potential exit was blocked, every shadow hiding another threat. She realized with sinking dread that the people she had loved and trusted most had become the architects of her demise. The confrontation escalated rapidly, the night filling with shouted words, the sounds of struggle, and the sharp cries of fear. In a moment that would be etched in memory, Amara's life was violently interrupted. The attack, swift and merciless, left her gasping for breath, her body crumpling to the pavement. The bright engagement ring, once a symbol of hope, now lay hidden in the dust, a silent witness to the tragedy that had unfolded. Her attackers paused, breathing heavily, faces flushed with anger and the dark satisfaction of jealousy realized. The alley, once a passage to home and safety, had become a stage for destruction, a place where envy had triumphed over loyalty, where friendship had been replaced by malice. By the time the distant sounds of emergency sirens reached the scene, it was too late. Amara's life had been stolen in the cruelest way, a victim not of strangers, but of those who had shared her secrets, her laughter, and her dreams. The tragedy sent shock waves through the community, leaving those who knew her in disbelief and grief. David, waiting at home, oblivious to the unfolding nightmare, would later receive the news that no lover should ever hear. Family and friends who had celebrated her engagement hours before were now thrust into mourning, forced to reconcile the joyous memory of a proposal with the harsh reality of loss. The city, too, felt the ripple of tragedy, the story becoming a cautionary tale of envy, betrayal, and the fragility of life. In the aftermath, questions filled the air. How could jealousy consume those who were closest to her? How could a moment of happiness turn into a nightmare so swiftly? The investigation would reveal the calculated nature of the act, the planning that had gone into betraying someone who had trusted implicitly. And though justice would eventually be sought, nothing could undo the irreversible loss. Amara's story, a tale of love, trust, and fatal betrayal, became a haunting reminder. Sometimes, the people we hold closest can harbor the darkest intentions, and the brightest moments can be shadowed by envy and malice. The morning after the tragedy, the city woke to a stark, chilling reality. News of Amara's death spread quickly, carried by the hum of social media and the whispers of neighbors, friends, and co-workers. Messages of shock and disbelief poured in from people who had celebrated her engagement just hours before. How could someone so full of life, so radiant with joy, be gone so suddenly? How could happiness be stolen so violently? David, still in disbelief, had been among the first to arrive at the scene. His eyes were red from crying, his hands trembling as he held the small engagement ring she had worn just hours before. The memory of the proposal, the laughter, the tears, the promise of a shared future, was now tainted by tragedy. Every heartbeat echoed the question, why? Why would jealousy, a feeling so small and seemingly harmless, escalate into an irreversible act of destruction? Authorities quickly began the investigation. Forensic teams scoured the scene, piecing together evidence of the attack. Witnesses who had seen the car parked nearby provided descriptions of Sophie and Layla, confirming suspicions that Amara's death had not been random. Every step of the investigation painted a grim picture. The jealousy had been premeditated, planned meticulously, and executed with chilling precision. The community, meanwhile, struggled to come to terms with the betrayal. Those who had known Sophie and Layla were stunned. How could people so close to Amara orchestrate her death? The tragedy sparked conversations about envy, trust, and the fragility of human relationships. Parents warned children about jealousy. Friends re-evaluated their own bonds, and society as a whole grappled with the unsettling truth that danger often comes from the people we trust most. The news media, too, seized the story. Headlines screamed of betrayal and murder, emphasizing the shocking twist. Friends, not strangers, had claimed the young woman's life. Social media was ablaze with reactions, shock, grief, and outrage. Some mourned Amara as a symbol of innocence lost, while others discussed the darker implications, how envy can consume hearts and destroy lives. The story became a cautionary tale, repeated in classrooms, online forums, and community gatherings, a grim reminder of human fragility and the destructive power of unchecked jealousy. Meanwhile, David struggled with his own grief. The man who had promised to protect her, to build a life of love and security, was left powerless to prevent the tragedy. He replayed every detail in his mind, the proposal, the celebration, the moment she stepped out into the night, and the helplessness weighed on him like a stone. Yet, amidst the heartbreak, he resolved to seek justice for Amara, to ensure that her death was not in vain. As the investigation unfolded, Sophie and Layla were apprehended. Confessions revealed the extent of premeditation, months of resentment, months of watching Amara's life and happiness from the sidelines, and months of planning an act of vengeance fueled purely by jealousy. Courts, media, and society collectively responded with a mixture of horror and condemnation. Sentences were handed down, justice pursued, and the community sought closure, but the scars remained, etched deeply in the hearts of those who loved Amara. Memorials were held in her honor, spaces filled with flowers, candles, and tears. Friends and family recounted memories of her laughter, kindness, and warmth, celebrating the light she had brought into their lives, even as they mourned its abrupt end. Each tribute carried a bittersweet note: joy for the life she had lived, grief for the future that was stolen, and reflection on the fragility of happiness when jealousy and envy go unchecked. Beyond the legal outcomes and public mourning, Amara's story left a deeper, more profound impact. It became a lesson in the hidden dangers of human emotion, the silent, corrosive power of envy. It was a reminder that joy, especially visible joy, can sometimes attract the most dangerous attention, even from those closest to us. And it highlighted the importance of discernment, of understanding not just who loves us, but who harbors darkness behind smiles and laughter. The tragedy also sparked conversations about mental health, conflict resolution, and emotional intelligence. Community leaders, educators, and spiritual mentors discussed how envy can fester and destroy if not addressed. Schools and organizations initiated programs to teach empathy, understanding, and emotional resilience. Social media campaigns emerged, urging people to celebrate others' achievements rather than covet them, emphasizing that happiness should never be weaponized. For David and Amara's family, healing was a slow, painful journey. The ring she had worn became a symbol not only of love lost, but also of vigilance against betrayal. Every anniversary, every birthday, every memory carried with it the dual weight of love and grief. Yet, Through the sorrow, they also carried the message that Amara's life, though cut short, had value, it had meaning, and it had left an indelible mark on everyone who knew her. As time passed, the story of Amara, the young woman who said yes but never made it home, remained a cautionary tale. Friends and family spoke of her with reverence, remembering her laughter, her kindness, and the tragic lesson her life and death had taught. Jealousy, if left unchecked, can destroy even the brightest moments, and trust, once broken, leaves wounds that never fully heal. And so, the city remembered her not just for the tragedy that claimed her life, but for the joy she had brought in her short time, a reminder that even in darkness, the light of her spirit would never be forgotten. Amara's story, tragic though it was, became a beacon of reflection, urging vigilance, empathy, and the recognition that human hearts can harbor both profound love and profound
Thank you for
danger.
watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this.